The lights in the great meeting hall were bright and warm. Hundreds of alien beings sat in curved rows that stretched up toward the ceiling. Some had fur, others had scales, and a few looked like walking crystals that sparkled when they moved. The air smelled like a mix of flowers and metal, strange sounds filling the space as different. Species talked in their own languages. Captain Jake Martinez sat near the back of the hall. He was the only human in the room, which made him stand out among all the colorful aliens. 35 years old, Jake had been coming to these meetings for 5 years now. His job was to speak for Earth and all the humans who lived there. But humans were still new to this galactic community, so they could only watch and learn for now. Jake wore his simple blue uniform with Earth symbol on the chest. He watched as the meeting began, like it always did. The tall, bug-like creatures, called Thranks, stood at attention around the room. They were the security guards. Their big compound eyes looked in all directions at once, and their forearms held strange weapons that hummed with energy. In the front rows sat the Zalaki. They looked like large rabbits that walked on 2 legs with soft gray fur and big dark eyes. They were plant eaters and got scared very easily. Every loud noise made them jump and look around nervously. The crystal beings called Vorthok floated in special suits filled with gas from their home world. When they talked, their bodies made musical sounds that their machines turned into words. Everyone could understand. They were very smart, but also very careful about everything. Today we discussed trade routes through the Outer Rim, announced the meeting leader. She was a Zalaki named Council Leader Miraven. Her voice was soft and gentle, the way all Zalaki spoke. The pirates have been attacking ships again. Jake listened as the different species talked about the problem. The Zalaki wanted to avoid the dangerous areas completely. Vorthok suggested building more defense stations. Thranks thought they should send more security ships. Each species had their own way of dealing with trouble, but they all seemed afraid of getting into any real fights. Jake had been in space long enough to know that most aliens were scared of violence. Their home planets were safe and peaceful. They never had to fight big predators or survive in dangerous places like humans did on Earth. This made them very different from humans, who grew up knowing that sometimes you had to fight to stay alive. The meeting was boring, just like most of them were. Jake found himself thinking about home. Earth was what the other species called a death world because it was so dangerous. There were huge storms, active volcanoes, poisonous animals, and predators that could kill you in hundreds of different ways, but to Jake, it was just home. Humans had learned to live with all those dangers a long time ago. Suddenly, loud sirens began wailing throughout the station. Red lights started flashing on the walls. The sound was so loud and sharp that Jake covered his ears for a moment. All around him, the alien beings began to panic. The Zalaki screamed and rolled into tight balls on the floor. The Vortex crystal. Bodies started shaking so hard that some of their gas suits cracked. Even the big Thranks guards froze in place, their weapons dropping from their hands. A voice came over the speakers. It belonged to Security Chief Kalaves, one of the Thranks. Her voice was shaking with fear. Emergency alert. A shadow stalker has breached the station. All beings must evacuate to secure areas immediately. This is not a drill. Jake had heard about shadow stalkers before. They were creatures from a nightmare world called Oblivion 6. They could walk through walls and feed on the brain energy of living things. Most aliens considered them the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. Just hearing the name was enough to make entire planets ask for military protection. But as Jake looked around at all the terrified aliens, he felt something different. He was not scared. He was curious. How had one of these creatures gotten onto the station? What did it want? And most importantly, what was everyone so afraid of? Jake stood up calmly while chaos continued around him. A Zeliki nearby was crying and shaking. A group of Vorthok had huddled together, their crystal bodies making scared musical sounds. The Thranks guards were talking rapidly into their communicators, but they sounded more frightened than professional. Jake walked toward the security station at the front of the room. His boots made steady sounds on the metal floor as he moved past the panicking aliens. Some of them stared at him with wide eyes, unable to understand why he was not running or hiding. "Security Chief Koloves," Jake said into the communication panel. His voice was calm and steady. "This is Captain Martinez. What is the creature's last known location?" There was silence for a moment. Then Koloves responded, her voice full of confusion. "Captain Martinez, you should be evacuating with the others. This creature is extremely dangerous." "I understand that," Jake replied. "But someone needs to deal with it, and everyone else seems too scared to think clearly." "Where was it last seen?" "Section C7, near the maintenance tunnels," Koloves answered. "But Captain, you do not understand. Shadowstalkers are apex predators. They have killed entire crews of ships. No one fights them and lives." Jake checked. His sidearm, a weapon designed for Earth's most dangerous animals. On Earth, we have entire forests full of apex predators. Humans learned how to deal with them a long time ago. Every predator has weaknesses. You just have to know what they are. The aliens around him stared in amazement. To them, Jake seemed either very brave or completely insane. They could not understand how anyone could be calm when faced with such a terrible threat. But Jake was not being brave. He was just being human. On Earth, people dealt with dangerous animals every day. They've studied them, learned their habits, and found ways to stay safe. It was just part of life. As the station continued to shake with emergency sirens, Jake began walking toward Section C7. Behind him, aliens whispered among themselves, unable to believe what they were seeing. The human was actually going to hunt the hunter. Jake walked through the empty corridors of the station. His footsteps echoed in the metal hallways. Most of the lights had been turned off to save power, making long shadows stretch across the walls. The emergency sirens had stopped, but red. Warning lights still flashed every few seconds. He was not alone. 2 other humans had joined him when they heard what he was planning to do. Dr. Elena Ross was a scientist who studied alien animals. She had been working on the station for 6 months, learning about creatures from different worlds. Nervous, but determined to help. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Cooper was part of Earth's diplomatic security team. He was supposed to protect human visitors to the station. Ryan had military training and carried better weapons than Jake, but he had never faced anything like a shadow stalker before. "Are you sure about this?" Lena whispered as they moved deeper into the station. Her voice shook slightly. "Maybe we should wait for the alien security forces to handle it." Jake shook his head. "The alien security forces are all hiding in safe rooms. They are too scared to think straight. If we wait, this creature will do whatever it came here to do." They reached Section C7, where the maintenance tunnels began. The area was darker than the rest of the station. Pipes and cables ran along the walls and ceiling. The air smelled like oil and metal. It was the perfect place for a predator to hijack. Jake stopped and held up his hand. Lena and Ryan froze behind him. Jake listened carefully. On Earth, hunters learned to use all their senses. They listened for sounds that did not belong. They looked for signs that something had passed through an area. They even used their sense of smell to track animals. There, Jake pointed to scratch. Marks on a metal pipe. Something with claws tested this surface. It was checking to see if the metal was strong enough to support its weight. Elena looked at the marks with wide eyes. "What do you know that?" "Because that is what predators do," Jake explained. "They test their environment before they commit to a path. Every predator species does this, whether they are from Earth or from another world. It is basic survival behavior," he continued. Forward, following the tunnel system, Jake taught them as they walked. He showed them how to move quietly, how to watch for signs of the creature, and how to use the station's layout to their advantage. "Predators like dark, narrow spaces," Jake said. "They can control who comes and goes. But they also like to have escape routes. Look for places where this creature could run if it felt threatened." Ryan pointed to a junction where 4 tunnels met. "Like there?" "Exactly," Jake nodded. "That is probably where it will make its den. Multiple escape routes, good visibility of approaching threats, and easy access to the rest of the station." As they got closer to the junction, Jake noticed something else. There was a strange smell in the air. It was not quite like anything from Earth, but it reminded him of the smell that big cats left behind when they marked their territory. "It is close," Jake whispered, pulled out his weapon and checked the settings. The gun was designed to stop Earth's most dangerous predators: bears, big cats, even the giant wolves that lived in the northern forests. Jake hoped it would work on an alien creature too. Alina stayed close behind him, carrying a scanner that could detect different types of energy. Ryan moved to the other side of the tunnel, his military training keeping him alert and ready. They reached the junction and looked around carefully. The tunnel stretched away in 4 directions, disappearing into darkness. Everything was quiet, except for the soft hum of the station's systems. Then Alina gasped, "There's something behind us." Jake turned around slowly. At first he saw nothing. Then the air seemed to shimmer, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. The shimmer grew thicker and darker until it became a shape that looked almost like smoke. Shadowstalker was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. It was not solid like Earth animals. Instead, it seemed to be made of living darkness that moved and flowed like water. 2 bright eyes glowed in what might have been its head. Long tentacles of shadow reached out from its body, feeling the air around it. Alina screamed and stumbled backward. Ryan tried to raise his weapon, but his hands were shaking too much to aim properly. The creature's presence filled the tunnel, with a feeling of cold fear that seemed to get inside their minds. But Jake did not freeze. He had faced down charging bears and stalking mountain lions. He had survived in places where one mistake meant death. Fear was just another piece of information to use. Jake raised his weapon and fired. The energy beam hit the Shadowstalker in what looked like its center. The creature made a sound like breaking glass mixed with a scream. The darkness around it flickered and became unstable. The Shadowstalker pulled back, its form becoming less solid. It seemed surprised that something had actually hurt it. For a moment, Jake could see uncertainty in those glowing eyes. "Can be hurt," Jake said to his companions. "That means it can be stopped." The creature moved backward into one of the tunnels, disappearing into the darkness. But Jake had learned something important. The Shadowstalker was not invincible. It was just another predator, and every predator had weaknesses. "Come on," Jake said, moving forward again. "Now we know we can fight it. Time to learn what it really wants." Alina and Ryan followed him, still scared but now understanding that the human way of thinking about predators might actually work. Even against creatures from nightmare worlds, knowledge and courage could be more powerful than fear. Jake led his team deeper into the station, following the trail the Shadowstalker had left behind. The creature moved in a strange way, sometimes walking through solid walls, and other times staying in the tunnels like a normal animal. But Jake noticed something important about its path. "It is not moving randomly," Jake said, stopping to study claw marks on a junction box. "Look at where it has been. Every place it stopped has something in common." Alina looked at her scanner readings. "What do you mean?" Jake pointed to the walls around them. "Power cables. Every place the creature marked or damaged has main power cables running through it. It is following the station's power grid." Ryan checked his map of the station. "If it keeps following this path, it will end up at the main power core." "Exactly." Jake nodded. "This creature is not just hunting for food. It has a plan." Alina pulled out her portable computer and connected to the station's database. Her fingers moved quickly across the screen as she searched for information about Shadowstalkers. After a few minutes, her face went pale. "Jake, you need to see this," she said. "According to the records, Shadowstalkers are not just predators. They are highly intelligent. Some reports say they are as smart as humans, maybe smarter." Jake read over her shoulder. The information was disturbing. Shadowstalkers lived in groups called pods. They could communicate over long distances using some kind of energy signal. And they were known to attack space stations and ships, not just for food, but to disable their defenses. "So this one is trying to shut down the station's power," Ryan said. "But why?" "Why?" Jake thought about it. On Earth, pack hunters often sent scouts ahead to prepare for the main attack. Wolves did it. Humans did it too, back when they hunted in tribes. It is calling for help. If it can shut down our defenses, more of them can come aboard. This changed everything. They were not just dealing with one lost predator. They were facing the advanced scout of a possible invasion. Meanwhile, Throughout the rest of the station, the alien species continued to hide in their safe rooms. The Zalaki had gathered. In the central meeting hall, huddled together in large groups, they sang soft songs to calm each other, but their voices shook with fear. The Vorthok had sealed themselves in their special chambers, increasing the pressure in their gas suits until they could barely move. They communicated only in the highest musical tones, which meant they were terrified. Even the Thrank's security forces had pulled back to defensive positions around the most important areas of the station. They had set up barriers and weapon positions, but they made no effort to actually hunt the creature. Their compound eyes darted nervously at every shadow. Jake understood why they were so afraid. These species had evolved on peaceful worlds. The Zalaki came from a planet with no large predators at all. The Vorthok lived in crystal caves where the biggest threat was cave-ins. The Thranks were originally prey insects that developed intelligence to hide from predators, not fight them, but humans were different. Earth had taught them that sometimes you could not run or hide. Sometimes you had to stand and fight, or everything you cared about would be destroyed. Jake contacted the station's main computer system. The artificial intelligence that ran the station was called Aiden. It was designed to be helpful and logical, but even it seemed confused by the situation. "Aiden, I need you to help me track this creature," Jake said into his communicator. "Captain Martinez, I must advise you to return to a secure area," Aiden replied. "Station protocols require all personnel to remain in safe zones during a code red emergency." "Aiden, if this creature reaches the power core, there will not be any safe zones left," Jake explained. "I need to stop it before that happens." "But you are only one human against an apex predator," Aiden said. "The probability of success is very low." Jake smiled. "Aiden, humans have been hunting apex predators for thousands of years. We did not survive by avoiding them. We survived by being smarter than they were." Aiden was quiet for a moment, processing this information. "I do not understand. How can prey animals defeat predators?" "Because we are not prey animals," Jake said. "Humans are predators too. We just hunt differently." Lena looked up from her computer. "Jake, I found something else. Shadow stalkers use quantum energy fields to phase through solid matter. But the process requires a lot of energy. If we could disrupt their energy field, they would be trapped in normal space." Ryan studied the station's power grid map. The main distribution center has electromagnetic field generators. If we overload them, we could create interference that might stop the creature from phasing. Jake nodded. "That is where we make our stand." "Aiden, can you help us set up electromagnetic interference in the power distribution center?" "I can adjust the field generators," Aiden replied. "But this will require precise timing. The creature must be in the center when the fields activate, or it will simply phase away to a different location." "Then we need to make sure it comes to us," Jake said. "We need to make it think the power core is undefended." Lena and Ryan looked at him with concern. "That sounds very dangerous," Elena said. Jake checked his weapon again. "Everything worth doing is dangerous. The question is whether we let fear stop us from doing what needs to be done." The three humans began making their way toward the power distribution center, knowing that their next encounter with the Shadow Stalker would determine the fate of everyone on the station. The power distribution center was a large room filled with humming machines and flashing lights. Thick cables ran across the ceiling like metal vines. Control panels covered the walls, showing the flow of energy throughout the entire station. This was the heart that kept everything running. Jake studied the room carefully. It had only 2 entrances, which was good for controlling where the Shadow Stalker could go. But it was also bad because it meant fewer escape routes for the humans if their plan failed. "Alina, I need you to monitor the creature's energy patterns," Jake said. "When it gets close, you will be able to detect changes in the quantum field around it." Alina set up her scanner near the main control panel. Her hands shook slightly as she worked, but her voice was steady. "The readings should spike just before it phases through the wall." Ryan was placing small explosive charges around the room. They were not meant to hurt the creature directly. Instead, they would damage specific power cables at exactly the right moment. "If the electromagnetic field does not work, these charges will cut power to the whole station," Ryan explained. "The creature will not be able to complete its mission, but we will also be stuck here in the dark." Jake nodded. Better than letting more shadow stalkers board the station. AI'd N's voice came through the speakers. Captain Martinez, I have detected movement in Section D4. The creature is approaching your location. How long do we have? Jake asked. At its current speed, approximately 4 minutes, Aiden replied. Jake took his position near the center of the room. This was the most dangerous part of the plan. He had to make himself visible to the creature, to draw it into the center, where the electromagnetic field would be strongest. But that also meant he would be closest to the shadow stalker when it appeared. Alina watched her scanner. Jake, are you sure about this? On Earth, do people really hunt things that can walk through walls? Jake thought about his childhood in the mountains of Colorado. Not exactly. But we hunt things that are faster than us, stronger than us, and have better senses than us. The trick is not to be better than them at what they do. The trick is to make them play by your rules instead of theirs. 2 minutes, Aiden announced. Ryan finished setting the last explosive charge. Ready on this end? Lena's scanner began. To beep faster, I am getting readings. The quantum field is fluctuating about 50 meters away. Jake raised his weapon and aimed at the wall where he expected the creature to appear. Remember, everyone stay calm. Predators can sense fear and panic. They use it to confuse their prey. 1 minute, Aiden said. The beeping from Elena's scanner became rapid and urgent. It is very close now. The energy readings are off the charts. Air in the room began to feel cold. The lights flickered slightly. Jake could sense something watching them, even though he could not see it yet. 30 seconds, Aiden warned. A section of the wall began to shimmer. The metal seemed to bend and wave like water. Then the darkness pushed through, and the shadow stalker entered the room. It was larger than it had appeared in the tunnels. Its form shifted and flowed, but Jake could see that it was focused on the main power core at the far end of the room. The creature's glowing eyes scanned the area. Jake could feel its intelligence studying the situation. For a moment, the shadow stalker seemed confused. It had expected the power center to be unguarded, but there were 3 humans standing. In its way? Now, Aiden, Jake shouted. The electromagnetic field generators around the room roared to life. The air filled with crackling energy. Sparks flew from the power cables. The whole room lit up with blue and white lightning. The shadow stalker screamed. Its dark form became solid and stopped shifting. Ow. The creature tried to phase through the floor, but the electromagnetic field held it in normal space. For the first time since boarding the station, it was truly vulnerable. Jake fired his weapon. The energy beam hit the creature in its center mass. The shadow stalker stumbled backward, its form flickering but remaining solid. Ryan joined the attack from the other side. His military-grade weapon sent powerful pulses of energy that forced the creature away from the power core. But the shadow stalker was not helpless. It lashed out with its tentacles of darkness, striking at the humans with incredible speed. One tentacle hit Jake in the shoulder, sending pain through his entire body. Another nearly caught Alina, who dove behind a control panel just in time. The creature was learning, began moving in patterns that made it harder to hit. Even trapped in solid form, it was still a deadly predator. Alina, can you boost the electromagnetic field? Jake called out while dodging another attack. I am trying, but the generators are overheating, Alina replied. We only have a few more minutes before they shut down automatically. Ryan's weapon, overloaded from continuous firing. Sparks flew from the barrel, and he had to drop it. I am out of primary weapons. The shadow stalker seemed to sense their weakness. It moved toward Alina, who was the most vulnerable target. But Jake had one more trick. He pulled out a small device from his belt. It was a neural scrambler, designed to confuse the brain patterns of Earth predators during capture operations. Ugly, Jake shouted at the creature. Over here. When the shadow stalker turned toward him, Jake activated the neural scrambler. The device sent out waves of energy that disrupted neural activity. The creature stopped moving and swayed like it was dizzy. Alina saw her chance. She activated an emergency protocol that flooded the room with sedative gas. It was meant for calming panicked aliens during emergencies. But Alina hoped it would work on the shadow stalker too. The combination of the neural scrambler and the sedative gas was too much for the creature. collapsed to the floor. It's dark. Form becoming still and quiet. The trap had worked. The Shadow Stalker was defeated. The sedative gas slowly cleared from the power distribution center. The Shadow Stalker lay still on the metal floor, its dark form no longer shifting or moving. The electromagnetic field generators had shut down automatically, but the creature remained unconscious from the neural scrambler and gas combination. Jake sat against a wall, holding his injured shoulder. The creature's attack had left him with deep bruises, but nothing was broken. Alina checked her scanner readings, while Ryan examined the unconscious Shadow Stalker from a safe distance. "It is definitely alive," Alina reported.
What?
"But the sedative should keep it unconscious for several hours." Throughout the station, the emergency lights stopped flashing. AID's voice came over the speakers with an announcement that the immediate threat had been neutralized. Slowly, the alien beings began to emerge from their safe rooms. The first to arrive at the power center was Security Chief Calaviz. The tall Thranx approached cautiously, her compound eyes wide with amazement. Behind her came a group of other security officers, all staring at the three humans and the defeated predator. "How did you do this?" Calaviz asked. Her voice was filled with confusion and respect. "Shadow Stalkers have destroyed entire military ships. How did three humans stop one?" Jake stood up slowly, wincing from his shoulder injury. "We studied it. We learned how it behaved. Then we used that knowledge to create a trap." "But you could have been killed," one of the Thranx officers said. "Why did you not wait for reinforcements?" "'Cause there was no time," Jake replied. "The creature was trying to disable the station's defenses so more of its kind could board. Every minute we waited made the situation worse." More aliens began to gather outside the power center. Zalaki peeked around corners with their big, dark eyes. Vorthok floated nearby in their gas suits, their crystal bodies humming with curious musical tones. They all seemed amazed that the terrifying predator was lying motionless on the floor. A few hours later, Ambassador Lisa Hart arrived with a full diplomatic team from Earth. She was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Lisa had been dealing with alien politics for over a decade. She understood how important this moment was for human-alien relations. "Captain Martinez," she said as she entered the power center, "I hear you have been making quite an impression on our galactic neighbors." Jake smiled tiredly. "Just doing my job, Ambassador." Lisa examined the unconscious Shadow Stalker with professional interest. "Dr. Ross, what have you learned about this creature?" Elena had spent the last few hours studying the sedated predator. "It is fascinating, Ambassador." The Shadow Stalker was not trying to hurt anyone directly. It was confused and scared. The station's artificial environment disrupted its natural navigation systems. "What do you mean?" Lisa asked. Alina pointed to her scanner readings. "Shadow Stalkers use quantum energy fields to find their way home. But the station's power systems created interference that blocked those signals. The creature was trying to boost the station's power output so it could send a distress call to its pod." This information changed everything. The creature that had terrified the entire station was not a monster trying to kill everyone. It was a lost animal trying to get home. Jake looked at the sleeping Shadow Stalker with new understanding. So when it was heading for the power core, it was not trying to destroy the station. It was trying to fix its navigation problem. "Exactly," Alina nodded. "And when that did not work, it would have tried to call for help. That is why more Shadow Stalkers would have come. They would have been trying to rescue this one." Lisa smiled. "Dr. Ross, this is exactly the kind of thinking that makes humans valuable to the galactic community. You looked past the fear and found the real problem." Over the next few days, Alina worked with alien scientists to find a way to help the Shadow Stalker return home. They discovered that the creature's homeworld was only a few light years away, by creating a special beacon that could cut through the station's interference. They were able to guide a Shadow Stalker rescue pod to their location. The rescue was peaceful. The other Shadow Stalkers who came for their lost pod member were careful not to frighten the station's inhabitants. They communicated through energy patterns that Alina had learned to interpret. They were grateful that the humans had protected their pod member instead of killing it. When the Galactic Council met again a week later, the atmosphere was completely different. The same aliens who had panicked and hidden now looked at the human delegation with respect and curiosity. Council leader Miraven spoke for the assembly. The humans have shown us something important. They have shown us that even the most dangerous situations can be handled with knowledge and courage instead of fear. Ambassador Lisa Hart stood to address the council. We humans grew up on a world that taught us hard lessons. We learned that running from problems does not make them go away. We learned that understanding something is the first step to dealing with it. But you could have been killed, said a Vorthok representative, its crystal body ringing with worried tones. Yes, Lisa admitted. But fear of death cannot stop us from protecting what we care about. Captain Martinez and his team risked their lives because they understood that sometimes you have to face danger to keep others safe. The council voted unanimously to upgrade humanity's status from probationary members to full members of the galactic community. But more importantly, they created a new position, Director of Crisis Response. Jake was offered the job, but he surprised everyone by suggesting a different approach. This should not be just one person's job, he said. We should train beings from all species to handle dangerous situations. Each species has different strengths. Together, we can handle anything the galaxy throws at us. And so the Interspecies Crisis Response Team was born. Jake became its first director, but the team included members from every species in the galactic community. They trained together, learned from each other, and prepared for whatever unknown dangers might threaten their peaceful worlds. The Shadow Stalker incident became a legend throughout the galaxy. It was the story of how 3 humans faced down a creature that terrified entire civilizations. But more than that, it was the story of how understanding and courage could overcome even the darkest fears.